Welcome to If Numbers Could Talk. My name is KEILYN. If Numbers Could Talk is a part of the Thinkering Group. You can find us over at thinkering.space. You can also find at Thinkering Space the Thinkering Talks podcast, the Exofathom podcast, along with the Plank Talks with Joe. When you get a chance, please check out our merchandise. We have merchandise on our website, thinkering.space, as well as merchandise at teespring.com/thinkering shop. Please visit, grab a t-shirt, grab a mug. We'll appreciate it. And when you do, feel free to let us know that you've decided to become a member of any of our fan clubs. Also, if you would like, take a trip on over to at If Numbers Could Talk with an underscore under between each name on Instagram, at Exofathom, at Thinkering Talks. Also, you could type all of those ats and all of those names in over on Facebook and YouTube. And of course, as said before, visit thinkering.space. For those who are new to this show, If Numbers Could Talk is a show that is based around numbers. We only try to focus on what is considered the facts, the statistics, the numbers that come together to tell the story of what went on with a particular good, a particular athlete or athletes, or maybe even a movie or an album you like. As I said before, just going over it again for you. I want everybody to get a really good understanding of what we're trying to bring and what is on its way. Today's episode is called Stars Find Roles. Because sometimes we watch sports and we just know that someone's a star. This is the top player. This is the person that's doing all of these things. And those are usually called your superstars, right? Your top level stars. And then you have your all stars. And those are stars as well. And those stars have to find roles. Sometimes those stars are leaders. Sometimes those stars are not. Sometimes those stars begin as leaders and they have to find another role. Sometimes they start in another role and they become the leader. So today's episode is about two guys who I feel have gone through that journey in multiple ways. Those guys are Paul George, who just signed a new contract with the Los Angeles Clippers, and Jimmy Butler, who is currently still under contract and playing for the Miami Heat. He signed his contract with the Philadelphia 76ers and was traded down to Miami. I believe that's how that went. So, again, the two players we will be covering today. This is live. The two players we will be covering today are Paul George and Jimmy Butler. Now, let's start with those contracts. These are not two guys that I feel like are being overpaid or by any means. And I feel like they earned the money that they're getting. Paul George just signed a new contract, 4 years, $190 million. Jimmy Butler is currently under contract for 4 years, $140 million. Jimmy Butler was drafted 2011, round one as the 30th pick to the Chicago Bulls. He has played for the Chicago Bulls, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Minnesota Timberwolves, and currently is playing for the Miami Heat. Paul George was drafted round one, pick 10 in 2010. He was drafted to the Indiana Pacers, played for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and is now currently playing for the Los Angeles Clippers. Paul George has had a 10-year career. He is listed at 6'9", 220 pounds. Jimmy Butler has had a 9-year career. He is listed at 6'8", 232 pounds. Neither of these players have a ring. However, they are so close in everything, even being 1 year apart. Neither of these guys have a ring, and they've both had pretty decent seasons and careers to date. What I plan on accomplishing with this particular episode is showing a lot of people feel like one of these guys does not deserve the money that he is getting. And some people feel like the other guy probably shouldn't have signed before or should not have signed the contract he is currently signed to, and that he should have held out and he would be getting more money now. Who knows? I think they both made the decisions that work best. Paul George has been in the NBA for 10 seasons. Jimmy Butler has been in the NBA for 9 seasons. Paul George's season record. Paul George has played 652 NBA games. He has won 388 of those 652 NBA games and lost 264 of those NBA games, leaving him with 60%, 59.5% is Paul George's season win-loss record. Jimmy Butler has played a total of 581 games in the NBA. He has won 348 NBA games and lost 233 NBA games, leaving him at 60%, 59.9% for one Jimmy Butler in the NBA. Now, if you know how these guys started, Jimmy Butler kind of started as a role player. He wasn't really, the top guy by any means. Paul George, on the other hand, he came in, he was expected to be that guy from day one. Paul George has been to 9 playoff seasons, playing a total of 89 games. Jimmy Butler has been to a total of 8 playoff seasons, playing a total of 76 playoff games. Paul George has a playoff record of 41 and 48, winning 41 and losing 48 games, for a total of 46% for Paul George in the playoffs. And Jimmy Butler in the playoffs has won 36 games and lost 40 games, for a total of 47.4% in the playoffs for Jimmy Butler. Again, Jimmy Butler was never, until maybe recently, and some question and doubt that he's ever been considered the number one player on his team. However, Paul George always considered kind of the number one option until recently. And that's playing along Kawhi Leonard. I'm not quite sure when it came to him and Russell. I think it was probably like a 50-50 split if we're looking at the amount of touches and plays run for each player. All-Star. Paul George has been to 6 All-Stars. Jimmy Butler has been to 5. Paul George has one first team All-NBA selection, while Jimmy Butler has not been selected to the first team All-NBA. Jimmy Butler has 3 All-NBA team selections together, while Paul George has 5 All-NBA team selections together. Both of these players have 4 All-Defensive team selections altogether. Neither have been selected as Defensive Player of the Year. However, of those All-Defensive teams, Paul George has been nominated to the first team twice for the defensive first team. Paul George has also led the NBA in steals for 1 season. Paul George has been the Player of the Month 4 times. Jimmy Butler has been Player of the Month 1 time. Paul George has been the Player of the Week 5 times in his NBA career. Jimmy Butler has been the Player of the Week 3 times in his NBA career. Both of these players have been considered the most improved player in the NBA. Paul George in 2013, Jimmy Butler in 2015. Both of these guys played against each other 24 times. These guys played against each other 24 times and split even 50-50, 12 games winning, 12 games losing for each player. During those matchups, Paul George averaged 21 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 0.5 blocks with 3 personal fouls and 3 turnovers. Jimmy Butler averaged in his matchups versus a Paul George team 15 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, 0.5 blocks, 2 personal fouls, and 2 turnovers. These guys came, they played against each other, and to turn out 50-50 when these are what I would not call them journeymen, but by definition, the amount of times that these gentlemen have moved, I personally think they are both at their final destination. They will not be getting traded or moving anywhere else for the rest of their careers. However, before both these guys were on the verge of being considered journeymen for their careers. And I don't think a 12-12 split against one another or any of the numbers that I've read to this very moment sway or change the opinion or the facts that both of these guys are incredible athletes, that they do very well for themselves on the floor. And we, of course, on this show, we don't often talk about pockets and money. It's all about statistics. There are statistics that involve finance, but we don't often tread there. Now, for the season, like these guys have to have an average amount of times they do things, right? It's just how it works. For the season, Paul George has averaged over his career, season averages through his career, 20 points, 6.4 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 1.6 steals, 0.4 blocks, 2.7 personal fouls with 2.6 turnovers. Jimmy Butler has averaged over seasons of his career 17 points, 5.1 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.7 steals, 0.5 blocks, 1.4 personal fouls with 1.5 turnovers per game for each of these gentlemen through regular season statistics on average. Through the regular season, Paul George has a total of 13,016 points. Jimmy Butler has a total of 9,887 points. Paul George throughout the season has a total of 4,164 rebounds. Jimmy Butler has a total of 2,963 rebounds. Paul George has a total of 2,185 assists, while Jimmy Butler has a total of 2,155 assists. Paul George has a total of 1,134 steals, 1,139 steals for Paul George. And Jimmy Butler has 925 steals for his career on the regular season. Now, this was impressive to me for both of these gentlemen. Jimmy Butler has a total of 278 blocks for regular season. Paul George has a total of 287 blocks for regular season. Both of these are still active players, so all of these totals will continue to increase. In fact, I believe both of these gentlemen have NBA games this week as I speak. In fact, I know they do. Paul George played last night, and I believe Jimmy Butler will be playing tonight. Now, let's talk about percentages, because again, I was impressed. And if I'm being honest, a lot of times I'm looking at some of these stats. It's not often I'm not impressed. Most of these guys are professionals, if that makes sense. And I mean real life professionals, not I got a job and I can be called a professional. Like, no, they show up and show out. Paul George has season average on his career for percentage field goal. Paul George has an average percentage of 0.433, 43% from the field. Jimmy Butler has a total of 0.454, 45% from the field. Paul George shoots 38% from the 3-point range, and Jimmy Butler shoots 34% from the 3-point range. Jimmy Butler shoots, 84% from the free throw line, and Paul George shoots 85% from the free throw line. Now, I also like to go over something called best seasons. The best, what year did they have their best totals? Right? Now, again, I'm doing this simply because sometimes people they don't understand. Like, these guys work hard for what they get, and the stats are the easiest way, in my opinion, to show that. Right? So when we say to ourselves, like, oh, this guy doesn't deserve this, hey, listen, go look at the statistics. They'll show you who's who. Now, again, one of these guys have always been considered one of the top higher level players, and the other guy was always kind of considered a middle of the pack kind of guy. But when you look at this and you listen to these numbers that I'm giving you, these guys are pretty much the same person. In so many ways, they are the exact same person for different teams. But that, to me, is a part of finding your role. They are both stars, and they had to find their roles to become successful in this league. Paul George's best seasons for all statistics. For points, Paul George averaged 28 points in 2019. In 2019, he also had 8.2 rebounds, which is a season high. In 2013, Paul George averaged 4.1 assists. Again, in 2019, Paul George had 2.2 steals, which was a season high, a career high. In 2013, Paul George averaged 0.6 blocks for a career high. Jimmy Butler in 2016 averaged 0.6 blocks. In 2018, Jimmy Butler averaged 2 steals for a career high. In our most recent year of 2020, Jimmy Butler averaged 6 assists for a career high. Also in the previous year of 2020, Jimmy Butler averaged 6.7 rebounds for a career high. It was in 2017, however, that Jimmy Butler averaged 23.9, 24% from the field. Averaged 24, not percent, averaged 24 points per game. That was in 2017 for Jimmy Butler. It's pretty cool, pretty impressive. Again, these guys are showing that they are still doing well, and they can only continue to do well until the numbers start to show you that they are no longer doing well, right? But these are guys that are very clearly, very honestly, and very obviously coming and putting forth what they need for their team. They found their roles in the systems that they're in, or they are finding a better way to utilize their talents in the roles that they are currently placed in. Those are very important things to me. Those are the things that make the players that are gonna last, that make the players that, yeah, somebody might trade you. Someone may feel that this player no longer fits in their system, but once they put you out there on the block, and other front offices and GMs are aware that you're available, they're going to come paying for you. Both of these guys clearly have been in situations where they currently are, their current destinations, their current locations, they saw value in these stars, and they paid the price to get those guys. And those guys got there, and they found their roles. Those stars found their roles. So now it's time to get to big boy time. If you've tuned in before, you know what big boy time is. If you have not, allow me to explain. Big boy time is what they call the playoffs. It's when the big dogs, some big dog time for some. Some people may not want to call it big boy time, big dog time, big cat time. The most ferocious animals in the animal kingdom are big cats. So call it big cat time if you like. But this is when the most ferocious come out. This is when the real competitors, the champions on the hill, this is when they come out. The playoffs. It's playoff time. And in playoffs, the best of you has to come out. The best of these players have to come out, because this is what they've been playing for their entire lives. This one season to get to this one place. to get to that final destination and hold that trophy at the end of the season. So for the playoffs, of course, we have averages, and then we'll have some totals. So in the playoffs, Paul George has averaged 20.1 points, 7.1 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.6 steals, and 0.6 blocks for Paul George in the playoffs. Jimmy Butler in the playoffs has averaged 18.7 points, 5.8 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.6 steals, and 0.6 blocks. For Jimmy Butler, those are their playoff averages per playoff game played. In their entire playoff duration, however, they have totals. Jimmy Butler has scored 1,418 points in the playoffs, grabbed 437 rebounds, dished 316 assists, taken 123 steals, and thrown away 42 blocks for Jimmy Butler in his playoff career. Paul George in his playoff career has scored 1,788 points, grabbed 630 rebounds, dished 342 assists, taken away 146 steals, and thrown away 49 blocks. Again, I am thoroughly impressed with both of these gentlemen's assist and block numbers, seeing as how neither of them are the primary ball handler, even if they are the number one scoring option. In the playoffs, the percentage for Paul George in the field, Paul George averaged 42% from the field, 36% from the three-point range, and 82% from the free throw line for Paul George in the playoffs. While Jimmy Butler averaged 45% from the field, 35% from the three-point range, and 84% from the free throw line for Jimmy Butler. Again, these guys show up, they show out. But let's be clear, let's understand, let's know. These are not the same guys by any means, but they have a very similar role on their team. Their role, in my opinion, for both of these guys, they are both high level, high intensity defensive guys, but they also have a very innate ability. I'll call it innate. They both are very intelligible scorers. I wouldn't say either. And I know some people are going to be like, what? Paul George, what? I wouldn't say either of them are really the easiest guys to go out there and just get a bucket any given night. Any given possession. However, any given night, both of these gentlemen are going to have about 22, 24 on you. Probably grab about 4 or 5 rebounds, give you about 3, 4 assists, at least 1 steal apiece, maybe even block a shot. What more can you ask? What more can you ask? What you can ask is to know what their best playoff years were, or their best playoff percentages, their best playoff numbers, right? Because without their best playoff numbers, how will you actually know? You could look it up, but their absolute best playoff numbers are going to tell you not just what they did. We already talked about their best season numbers, but those best playoff numbers are going to tell you when the lights got a little brighter, when the stakes rose, what were they still able to accomplish? What roles did these stars find to maintain the level in which they were revered and or put in that position? Why should their teammates trust them? And what years were the best years to trust them on paper? So, Paul George in 2019 had 28.6 points, which is 29 points pretty much in every single playoff game of 2019. Jimmy Butler in 2015 had 22.9, 23%. Excuse me, 23%. Haha. 23 points in 2015. 2015 was the year to let Jimmy score. 2019 was the year to let Paul George score if you were on their team. Rebounds in 2017 for both of these gentlemen. In 2017, Jimmy Butler had 7.3 rebounds in every single game, which is 7 rebounds per game. In 2017, Paul George had 8.8 rebounds per game. Let's round that off to 9 rebounds per game. Assist in 2020, the year that just passed us. 2020 is back on us with Jimmy Butler, huh? Jimmy Butler had 6 assists in every playoff game. If you are not aware, Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat went to the finals to play against LeBron and the Lakers. In 2020, Jimmy Butler averaged 6 assists per game. In 2017, Paul George had 7.3 assists per game. In 2015, Jimmy Butler had 2.4 steals in every playoff game. While in 2014, Paul George had 2.2 steals in every game. Playoff game. Again, the category that just kept impressing me with this research, the block category. Jimmy Butler had 0.8 blocks in every game. So that means he probably blocked you in almost every game of 2017 playoffs. But Paul George in the 2011 playoffs, averaged 2 blocks per game. 2 blocks per game for Paul George. Now, hey, I know what if he only played 4 games? The average for Paul George in 2011 specifically in playoff games was 2 blocks for every game. It's pretty insane. But again, these are 2 gentlemen who both are in positions where I feel they are going to thrive for the duration of their career, or at least as long as they allow themselves to thrive where they are. And what I intended with these numbers is to show simply what the perception is about the roles that these stars have to find. Sometimes there's a perception that one guy is so much better than the other because of the role they have on a team. So the number 1 or number 2 option on one team and the number 4 option on another team can essentially be the same. And both of those teams be successful. It's all about what is necessary. Who needs what? So I ask you to ask yourself, you're a star. What is your role? And have you found it? Are you looking for it? And how and where and when will you find it? Ask yourself. But if numbers could talk is, again, not about our emotion, it's about our numbers. So do the statistics on your findings. What do you think of that? How often do you think those things about yourself? I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, for listening back. I appreciate all of the playbacks. Please, again, visit us over at YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Visit us on Instagram, Facebook, thinkering.space. Take care of yourself and those that you love. Have a good one.